So this is something a little bit different, but I thought might be helpful for me and potentially someone else. Quite recently I had quite a major breakdown with how I was feeling, and that was due to a lot of different reasons, and it all just got very overwhelming. A bit about my background: ever since I was young I struggled with mental health, so I was diagnosed with OCD from a very young age, and a lot of people think that's just you have to be about cleanliness, and you have to make sure everything's in the right place, but it's so much more than that. It stands for obsessive compulsive disorder, so it can be any thought could come into your mind at any moment, and it's like a scratch that you can't itch unless you do something about it. So I'll have thoughts of, I have to touch that door handle, otherwise a ceiling light will fall on somebody I care about. And it's just constant intrusive thoughts, and it's what I've struggled with all my life, which hasn't helped in a lot of situations. When I was at school, in secondary school, I got quite physically ill, and then because of that I had to stop a lot of what I cared about, and that started leading me down a worse route mentally as well. I mean, I'd never been that great mentally before either. I mean, I always struggled with things. I was always a bit of a oddball. But losing so many things I cared about, it spun me into a horrible state of depression for years, and I was always down. But I'm sure if any of you have had that situation, you learn how to hide it quite well. And depression is something that isn't just, oh, you seem down, and it's, oh, they have to be completely down all the time. It's something that just always affects you, and you're always just never quite happy, from my experience anyway. That led to a lot of different things: not eating properly, self-harm, and it just got worse and worse. And later on in secondary school I met my now ex-fiancée, and there was a lot of issues that happened back then, and it's a long story and I won't go into it, but a lot of things happened that made it very difficult for me to deal with, which was hard because I was already not in a great place. So the depression kind of just kept on getting worse and worse, and it led to me several times attempting to end my life, because it got so dark I didn't see another way through it. And that's kind of what happened the other night. I just got overwhelmed again, and I couldn't see past 5 minutes, and I just wanted to end my life again. So I went missing, and I went to a couple of places trying to end it. But before I could, the police found me, and I got taken to hospital for treatment. After speaking to one of the specialists, they said that I have a disorder which is called emotionally unstable personality disorder, also known as BPD, which is borderline personality disorder. And what it can mean is that my mood can fluctuate dramatically. So 1 minute I'm super depressed and I want to end my life, to the next minute I'm feeling really motivated and I feel like I can do something, to then I'll get really stressed or really frustrated, and it will just fluctuate, and it will literally take a second it's like a light switch. It will just change, and all of a sudden I'm in a different emotion. I've got a page up here, and just reading it, some of the most symptoms, like most usual symptoms, is feeling very worried about people abandoning me, and yeah, that's how I've always felt. I have very intense emotions, like it says on there. Yeah, when I feel something, I feel it really hard. There's no middle ground. It's 100 or 0. There's no in between. And it makes it hard to build relationships and maintain them, because there's always this nagging, there's always this thing in your brain never stopping. And then it also says it can make you act impulsively, which I can see where it is, because I will go from feeling fine to wanting and trying to kill myself within seconds. And there's nothing anybody can snap me out of it. And quite a few people who have this have suicidal thoughts and self-harm. They struggle to control their feelings. They can't control their feelings, which is exactly what I struggle with. I find it really hard to control my emotions, but I've always blamed myself for not being able to control them, and I thought there was something wrong with me, and that always brought me more and more down. But it was nice to finally hear from several doctors that it's not my fault. I can't help the way I am, and the way that my mood changes, and how I can't control my emotions barely at all. It's not my fault, and it was a huge amount of pressure just relieved off my shoulders, because I'd always blamed myself for years and years. And after anything that happened, I blamed myself so much. And I could never understand why it happened. And I tried so hard, but to finally hear that it's not my fault, that there's something up here which just doesn't let me control it, it just felt like relief. And I'd stopped blaming myself for so much. So I got found at a train station on the night I disappeared, and it was moments before the train came that the police actually found me and stopped me. And that was difficult, because at that moment I didn't want anything to do with being around. But now it's gotten me this new diagnosis, and I've been given medication to help it control. It's a kind of like a hormone stabilizer, so it can help me control the ups and downs more, and almost control my feelings better, along with other things like I always take, like antidepressants and sleeping tablets. But yeah, getting therapy for it as well. But it was only yesterday that I saw another specialist, and they were reading through my notes, and the first thing he did when he sat down was he asked me how I was. And he said, "That's a silly question, obviously you're not great because of what's been going on." But the second after, he said that he thinks I might be on a spectrum for autism/Asperger's, because what my notes suggest and my history and my family's history were very linked to that. And again, that would explain why I find it hard to build connections with people, but when I do, I will grasp on for dear life. And when they leave me, it literally feels like the world is collapsing on top of me. And then I feel like it's my fault, and then it all repeats again, and the emotions just go up and down, up and down, up and down. But yeah, now I know it's not my fault for being like that. It's the way I was born. Overthinking is another thing that has always plagued me, and that would also play into what a lot of people think I might have now. So I don't know, I'm almost just doing this as a recap for myself, as well as maybe anybody else who might be struggling with anything. And I mean, the cliche is to say, go talk to someone and go get help, but I know if you're in a situation like that, that's the last thing you want to do, and you feel like you're going to hear the same advice over and over again, and a lot of times you will, and you always just feel like nobody understands. But maybe you'll just find one person, which I did, and they seemed to actually get what I was coming from. And when somebody does, it's a big release, because you no longer have to carry the burden all on your own, and you actually can get some support that might actually help. So yeah, I'm just going to keep plodding away with what I do and doing everything the best I can. Yeah, I do it through sport and I do it through music, so that's what I'm going to focus on. I mean, it's not going to be easy, and I wouldn't kid myself or anybody that it will be, but just the sheer amount of people who actually stepped up for me when I went missing and showed that they cared. I mean, I had countless messages, like I honestly couldn't count them all. It was so many, from people I hadn't spoken to before, or people I hadn't spoken to in years as well. And some of the people who I thought would be there for me no matter what, and I'd been there for them, they went missing. But the sheer amount of people who did care overrid that, and I was blaming myself for that night about how I just couldn't take it anymore, and I just had to go and leave, and that I couldn't feel anything else apart from that. And it's the irrationality of what I've now been diagnosed with. So yeah, at least now I have the right help in place, and at least I know that all these things that have happened in my life, which I blame myself so much for, beat myself up over and over again, and was like, why did I let that happen? And now I know there was almost nothing I could do because of what I have. But yeah, I will just keep plodding along, but I thought maybe if I did this, then maybe somebody out there might feel the same way and feel like maybe there is hope, or maybe in a year's time I can come back and see where I was and where I am now, or I don't know. I just knew I wanted to do this, and here it is. So I want to thank a couple of my best mates who have really gone above and beyond the last couple of weeks and months, who've quite literally saved my life. Yeah, thank you. And obviously my family as well. Yeah, I'm rambling now, so I'll probably call it here, but I will keep you updated with however I feel, and if there's anything I feel like might be helpful to other people, I'll do it. And if people are struggling, like there are so many different channels you can call out there, like Samaritans do great work, or just your local GP, or just somebody you trust. It's, I mean, I'm always here, but I mean, I can't always be the most of help. But yeah, I hope you're all doing okay out there. And I will just keep doing what I'm doing.